welcome guys. Thank you for joining. This is our second session. It's building an authentic community. So no better people to have than JT from the Barnett Company. We've got Sabina, the founder of Dough, and then Julia, who's joining us from the Mush team. So thank you guys for joining again, like super pumped. I think the general feedback that we've gotten from everybody is they're excited to just attend, learn. You all have like super interesting backgrounds. Julia coming from RX Bar and then now heading up the marketing at Mush. Sabina, I feel like you've worked at some really interesting places as well. M13 and then now starting Dough. And then you also had a little stint on reality TV. Congratulations on the show. And then JT, like your background, you know, professional athlete coming into helping brands build a community online, I think is just like super interesting the way you've been able to do that.
Thank you.
But I would love it if you guys could just kick off and introduce yourselves, give a little bit of background, how you got where you are today, and then, you know, speak about the companies and your roles. And then JT, if you want to start us.
Yeah, dope. Thank you for having me. And if anybody is listening, put some shit in this chat so that we can answer some questions that you guys have as we're chopping it up. But my background, aside from being a professional reject as a hockey player, not making the NHL and getting cut from teams, content was my escape. So I became a creator. That led me to teaching companies how to create content. So for the past 4 or 5 years now, I've been teaching brands how to somewhat create cults, because I think that that's what everybody really is trying to do, is have actual genuine audience that care about the brand and about the product. And I think that one of the most impactful ways to do that is through content. So what the Barnett Company does is goes in and either teaches or helps build that kind of like internal content arm within companies, really teaching brands how to act more like creators. And then on the side, I still am creating content myself, making different educational content, lifestyle content, and documenting my process as I go. So excited to be here.
Thanks for coming, man. Sabina, if you want to go next.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm Sabina. I'm the founder and CEO of Dough. We make vegan and gluten-free delicious snacks. So we started with the line of cookie dough in October of 2020, expanded to dessert spreads, and then our latest cult favorite, speaking of cults, is our donut product, which is coming back in stock this week, finally. So we're excited about that. My background is primarily in CPG. So I was at PepsiCo, I was at Diamond Foods, working on junk food, essentially. And then I left to go to McKinsey for a couple of years in consulting, where I did mostly digital work. And, you know, really went from like Walmart being my biggest customer at PepsiCo to, you know, this D2C world and helping Fortune 500 companies get online, basically. It sounds so old to say that. And then after McKinsey, I was at M13, which is a VC here in LA that focuses mostly on consumer tech. But I built the venture studio there. So we essentially launched brands from within. We were majority owners, and really got my startup bug when I was at M13. So yeah, it's been a journey with Dough, but I would say our bread and butter. I love this panel, Authentic Community. I mean, I feel like Patrick, who's our head of marketing, and Cameron, who's our you know, social media manager, are probably even better suited to be here. But our community and our content and just our how do you say, like our I don't want to call them like cult consumers, but they kind of are, because they're a little nutty, but they are, you know, our cult consumers. They're the reason that we've been able to grow so quickly and build this brand so well. So you know, really big kudos to Patrick and Cameron on my team, who really build that and nurture them. But yeah, excited to answer some questions.
You guys definitely have a cult following. My mom, one of them. So I get to see
it.
I get to see it firsthand. Julia?
Awesome. Hey, everyone. I'm Julia. Really excited to be here. I lead marketing at Mush, which is a ready-to-eat overnight oats product, typically sold in the yogurt aisle. Very similar experience to Sabina, but in different orders. I actually started in strategy consulting and then realized I really wanted to be much closer to the consumer and brand and end user, and started my marketing career at Wrigley, also selling candy and not as healthy food. And then moved over to RX Bar, where I could really kind of connect my passion for health and wellness with the product and the marketing, which makes it a lot easier to really want to engage with that community. Was at RX Bar for quite some time, did a short stint outside of food, and then started at Mush about a year ago. And I think, some of the best advice I got early in my marketing career was always about, if you keep the consumer, we can call it community, cult, whatever we want to call it, first and foremost in the decisions you make, you really can't go wrong. And it's something that really has been a guiding principle to me. And I am so appreciative of the people on my team and then the forums that have been created to have more of those kind of consumer community conversations.
Yeah, and Mike Fata said something on the last panel about kind of just like listening to the customer and like their feedback is the most important no matter what. And I think the Mush crew and Dough have done a really good job of just building products that their community naturally gravitates towards. So we can jump into the questions. This one, Sabina, if you want to start us off, and then we can go around because I'm sure Julia and JT, you guys are going to have a ton to say about this. But can you talk about the importance of building a community around your brands and how it kind of differs to the traditional methods where acquiring customers was, how much money do you have? How much can we put into Facebook ads and just scale the brand that way?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we actually launched, I think Mush has a lot more time, right? But we launched in a time where it was already kind of not effective to use Facebook ads as your primary acquisition channel. It's kind of funny because you do have people who still blame it on that, they'll blame their high CACs or their performance. And it's well, we kind of in 2020, we were already kind of facing, you couldn't just guzzle money. It wasn't like the Warby Parker days, right? And so we knew from the beginning and made it a point from the beginning that we need other channels and we need to, not only do we constantly test, but we can't put all of our eggs in Facebook's basket, and we intentionally keep that percentage of our budget lower than others. And our two that are kind of unique to our brand are influencer and content. And so we do, we have a kind of really robust influencer strategy, but the ultimate version of our influencer strategy is a collab flavor, which, Dylan, pretty well about. And then on the content side, we invest pretty heavily in, it sounds funny to say, but in social, when a lot of other food and beverage brands don't necessarily do that. Social is something that they don't really care about. It's kind of oh, can we just throw a 22-year-old, on it? And can they just, or can we just get an intern from UCLA and they can just manage it and post, who cares? And so you'll actually see if you do a little bit of diligence, you can go to a ton of food and beverage brands' Instagram pages or TikToks, right? And you'll see the follower count, which is typically quite high, or, I would say on the higher side for a brand. And then you'll look at their engagement, and either one, they have their likes hidden, which is intentional, obviously, or you'll see literally 8 likes with 80,000 followers. And so that's kind of, it's kind of crazy. And that's kind of a product of, one, investing in Meta and Facebook ads. So all your followers are not really that engaged with you because they just followed you from an ad. And then two, you put, some person that was super cheap that you could pay hourly on your Instagram and TikTok. And so they're just kind of posting stock photos and, boring captions. And so, I think JT can probably talk the best to this, but I think making that our differentiator and focusing on the content as our acquisition tool is actually the best return we've seen. And even if Facebook is doing well, even if we've got a 3 to 4x ROAS in a certain month, I still am hesitant to pour more money in that channel. And the reason is because we know that they're less sticky, they're less engaged with the brand, they don't repeat quite someone who comes in through an influencer or through our content. So it just makes more even longer term financial sense for us to invest in content and influencer. So those two really, really are our bread and butter. But I think it varies depending on the brand you are too. So I don't think it's necessarily a one size fits all. I don't even know if that answered your question or I just got on my soapbox. Sorry.
You answered 4 of the upcoming questions. So I'm going to ask.
Sorry, guys.
No, you did good. That was awesome. Yeah, JT, if you want to go too.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything that Sabina was saying. And for me, it's been interesting to see as a creator, because I remember the days with Warby Parker and companies like Movement that had this kind of like formula where it was like, we shoot this style of content and then we just run the paid and we will get customers like this. And now with iOS updates and just all of the different things that have come with that, it's kind of shifted to where the paid isn't as effective. And now you have to, and you can still, it can still be effective, but it's just not, there's no formula like there was before. And so now what I look at as the formula, if there is any, is obviously omni-channel, but I think the content part of it has to be able to perform organically.
Yeah.
You can no longer rely on having the capital to invest into just paying to get in front of people and then buying it that way. It has to be like they genuinely have to have an interest in it. And so that for me is where I think Sabina does such a good job with the content, and the people on her team doing the content is people actually want to watch it. Like they actually care about it and they actually enjoy it. And when it comes across their page, they actually will take the time to stop and consume it, which then if that leads to them actually going and buying it, now they're not just like a one-time purchase because they saw an ad that had a discount on it. Now they actually have like an affinity towards the brand, which will lend to them not just buying one time, but buying more times because they're actually a loyal customer. And I think that that's what everybody's trying to push for. So I think community is the underlying thing that everybody is actually seeking, and people do it through different ways. But I think the most effective way is to actually figure out, how do we get people to genuinely want to watch the things that we're putting out, and then our paid can come through that. But let's try and figure out a way to do it organically, and that will be a much more sustainable method.
Yeah,
I was gonna tee it up for you. I was gonna say, Julia, I feel like Mush gets so much love on social organically. So I would love
yeah.
to kind of.
Well, so it's interesting. Definitely a couple thoughts to follow up with. First of all, I totally agree with what Sabina and JT have been saying. Early on, we started pre-Facebook days, or when Facebook was still in its heyday, but because we're a refrigerated product and it was really focused on selling in retail, there wasn't a lot of energy put toward paid media, and a lot more energy was put towards cultivating that influencer and micro influencer community. And Dylan, I think that's what you're referring to as you see a lot of the organic conversation for Mush on social today. I think where we are now additionally trying to put some focus is in that content piece, because it hadn't been as much of a focus area previously. And so that is a big area that the team is really leaning into this year, both across Instagram and TikTok. I think adding on, just taking a step back a little bit as we think about community and how that compares to the more traditional media, I think it's two major things for us. One is word of mouth marketing is really effective, whether we see it in third-party research or research that we do with consumers, like heard about it from family and friends is one of the main ways that people try new products and discover new brands. And the influencer community and the creator community have been able to do that on a slightly scaled, but not like fully scaled kind of in an environment. And so really it is effective from a marketing strategy because it inherently has that trust, because it's people that inspire that trust. I think the other piece is, the traditional paid media, or when I was at Wrigley, it was all about linear TV, like linear TV and print, forget even social media. That was the disruptive media back then, but it's so transactional, and it's so, here is an incentive to get you to purchase once, and there's no relationship being built there. So it's a very short-term conversion and a short-term consumer, versus community really enables that more relational and longer term kind of relationship.
Yeah, you talk about effectiveness. I think that's a good segue into like, how can brands actually measure that their community building efforts are going well? I know you guys talked about, high follower accounts and low engagements, but are there any other kind of factors you look for, KPIs? Julia, if you want to kick us off with that one too.
Sure, I can start and then I'll hand it over to the experts on this one. But I think, when it comes to the content piece of it, engagement rate is a big thing that we do look at. And that's where quite transparently, we saw an opportunity to really improve our content and make sure we're putting out content that resonates. So I think from the content lens, that's a great measure. When it comes to a bit more of the community, we're really looking at, how often are we getting tagged? And then what is kind of the percent positive sentiment? That's a very technical measure, but we actually recently implemented a tool called Zendesk, which integrates all of our consumer contacts across our email, customer service, phone, social, whatnot. And what that allows us to do is have more history if we've spoken with someone. So you can continue to build that relationship, but you can also create reports and measure. So one of the things we've started tracking is of all those conversations we're having, are they up? Are they going down? Are they positive? Are they complaints or feedback or whatnot? But I'm sure JT and Sabina have things to add.
Yeah, I mean, ours, so, similarly, there's kind of the quantitative metrics. The one that we've been looking at lately, which is, it's not even really a metric, but I kind of call it the ability to move. And the reason I call it that is because we were mostly D2C. We were 80% D2C our first year. We got into a ton of retail last year. And essentially, I think everyone on this call knows that velocities are king at retail. And so we do this thing when we launch with a new retailer where we tell our audience in many different ways, right? Like we'll do TikToks, we'll do Instagrams, we'll send emails, but essentially we'll tell them, go sell us out, go sell us out at these retailers. And every single time it has happened. And that is a crazy, someone got out of their house. It takes me so much, I have to pressure myself to go on a walk. Someone got out of the house, drove to the supermarket. Usually we find miles and miles away, right? If you're in the middle of the country, they're I drove 15 miles to the Sprouts, and they will pick up your product. Not only will they pick it up, they'll pick up multiple of them. And then they'll email Sarah, who's our customer service lead, who's hilarious and loves to interact with consumers. And then they'll post about it. And then we'll get our numbers back and we'll hear from, it happened with Sprouts, where they were now we have an in-stock issue and we need to get you guys back in stock. And that is truly the coolest thing to see. So, there are the quantitative measures, but I also like to look at some of those, take a step back and be whoa, we got people to get up and go to a store and sell us out. That's pretty cool. So that's right now, retail being so important to us, that's kind of the biggest metric I would say that we look at.
Love that. I think I completely agree with those. I think the retail sales is obviously probably the most important, and being able to actually activate your community to go and pull things off the shelf. The second thing that I would look at would be comment sections. I think comment sections is where you can find a lot of the vibes and almost research and development of what people are wanting to see more of, what people are enjoying, what people aren't enjoying, for new flavor launches, for collabs that you're doing with influencers, for even just the content that you're posting that could be a little trend. You're able to see within that comment section if people are liking it. The worst case scenario is there's no comments. The medium kind of case scenario is that there's comments that aren't incredible, but at least you're learning something. In the best cases, obviously, you have a lot of people that are in there that are hyping it up. That's where I always end up going when I'm trying to look into either new brands or new creators and see how engaged is their community. The last thing that I would really look at, which again is not really quantitative, is extended friend groups. What are people that don't know me directly saying about our company that know who our company is? What are they saying about our products? What are they saying about our team? What are they saying about our brand, our reputation? That is something that is a pretty clear indicator of where you guys are at and how you're doing. And so I always try to ask people in my circle, the people that know me through you, what do they have to say about what we're up to? What do they think we could do differently? What are they thinking they're really liking? And that's just kind of a little bit more information as to the direction to go.
Yeah, that anonymous, unbiased feedback, I think is always great. Don't go down the Twitter mentions rabbit hole though. I went down that once.
Don't go on Reddit.
Yeah, it's just not great. But no, I think the three of you kind of touched on something that I want to further go into that I've learned a lot about this year, is this concept of customer service being less of an operational aspect and more of a marketing initiative. and like deepening that loyalty amongst your consumers. I know Sabina, you guys post the responses you get through customer service all the time. And then Julia, you just mentioned you guys are implementing a new tool to help measure that. Like, how can brands use customer service as more of a marketing tool than just something that, you kind of just run in the background? Whoever wants to take it can go first.
Let me say, because I obviously don't have a tangible good product, but the way that I look at it is like, it should just be relationship building. Like, your customers, you're trying to build relationships with them. So I think the person that you have that is navigating that should be somebody that is very relationship oriented. Like Sabina was saying, I can't remember who on your team does that, but I think that's the way that it should be. Like, if I had an issue with a product and sent something and had somebody that genuinely was like, oh, I'm sorry that happened, or that went that way, or shipping got damaged, whatever, I would immediately like the brand more. It would immediately feel like I was cared for more, and like the brand has my interest, which then would make me want to buy again. So I think leading with human qualities and having it be a relationship builder is the way that I think would be the best for me as a consumer.
Yeah, I think JT touched on, one of the two advantages or ways I think about customer service with marketing. And it is like, you only have so many touch points as a brand to interact with people. And when you get the gift of a one-on-one conversation, like, it's an opportunity to build that relationship, bring the brand values to life in another touch point. So I would totally agree with that. The other big thing, which I think is often undervalued, is the value of the insights you get from whether it's customer service via a more traditional channel or on social. I think this was something I really learned at our X-Bar, is just, you can know right away if something's off with the new product you launched. You get great ideas for innovation and flavors. And, a number of flavors that we've had in the pipeline came from consumer comments. So I think it's so rich to help kind of form that marketing gut that your internal team has by really leveraging the insights that come through customer service.
Our customer service is pretty wacky. I would say, I think Christina's on this call, who, she's our head of ops and customer service, kind of reports up through her. And so Sarah is our customer service rep, and she is probably like the opposite of what you would think a customer service rep would be. She has her, she's got her playbook and her canned responses that, when we have kind of frequent, the frequent issues that she'll have, but she also builds a relationship in like a very humorous way with our consumers, to the point where like people will be, the other day she sent one where this woman was giving her these like dirty details about her breakup and how she just wanted her cookie dough because she just broke up with this guy, and like, someone took it from her doorstep, and like, whatever, it was this whole issue. And Sarah sent us the back and forth, and it's just hilarious to read. Like, it's like, who is giving you this much information? You're her therapist. Like, Sarah's being completely, like, she's speaking very colloquially. It's like, not very like overly professional. But that kind of stuff we'll hide people's names and whatnot, and then we'll post it on social. And that is like some of our most viral content that we have. We did it, I don't remember what the start of it was, but it was almost like mean tweets was the inspiration for it. And so instead of mean tweets, we did customer complaints. And that was like one of our most viral posts. And so since then, we've kind of made it a series where we like highlight Sarah, and anytime there's anything crazy we get, we'll like block out the names and we'll post it. And it's to this day, like one of the highest engaged things we get, but it's definitely like not rule book. So I don't know about, I would recommend it to every brand, but like we certainly get away with it, and it turns into fodder. And to your point, JT, about the comments section, like they're wild on those posts. So yeah, we've been able to use this kind of like almost professional and sometimes sterile, which is customer service, think like airline customer service thing, and turn it into kind of this like fun, quirky part about our company. And our consumers are champs. Like they're really funny about it, and they're really like, they share those same values. They're witty, they're awesome. So they kind of play the game as well.
I love that. I actually think that is relationship building, because like the people that are jumping into that, like your brand has such a like almost like fun and sassy vibe to it that I think that people are like, this is fucking great. Of course, this is their
Yeah.
customer service. So you're building relationships with your consumers. And I think people could easily follow that and have it be like, let's not go playbook and like have it scripted answers and it be whatever this person that has a personality wants to say. Or they could do whatever follows their own brand. Like some people have brands that are not sassy and fun. And
Yeah.
if they want it to be in line with what they do, that's fine too. I think that that's a fantastic way. And if I was a consumer buying a product from you and went into your customer service and somebody was like, tell me some real shit, I'd be like, this is amazing. I'd be like, this is perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the authenticity of your guys' brand, which we have a good question on authenticity that I will ask you guys in 4 minutes when we start that process. But JT, something you brought up was your comment around like viewing it from the consumer lens. And like, I would love to ask you from the creator side of things. Do you look for anything, or do like the creators in your network look for anything when like organically sharing brands? Is it purely just ones they have affinity to, or because my assumption is we have a lot of brands listening in on the call. So how can they build that affinity with creators, and what's that process like? If you have any tips or anything like that, would be
Sharing it as a creator.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think it really depends on like your brand as a creator. Like if you are somebody that talks about your lifestyle and the things that you use and your audience asks you those questions, I think it becomes very organic and natural for you to share. If you are somebody that is not getting asked those questions often, like I think honestly, a lot of business creators don't talk about the products that they're using because it's not natural and their audience isn't asking that. I think that for me, I love sharing it. And I think that the stuff that I share is the stuff that I feel like I genuinely enjoy, not stuff that is paid, not stuff that is gifted to me. It's the stuff that I actually genuinely enjoy and feel like my audience would. On that note, I do think that there's an interesting kind of moment going on of gifting has been happening so often for a while now that I think that a lot of people that post consistent products, particularly ones where it's like opening a box of something that got gifted to them, it can almost be overlooked now because it's so saturated and people are getting so many boxes and posting so many boxes that I actually think it's a underrated and underutilized play to gift people that never get packages, never get anything that is sent to them, because I think that the audience, when they're sharing it to their socials, would take more notice than when people are clicking through stories and it's the same creator that they watch open 7 different packages every Monday. So I don't know if that answers that question at all, but I really do think that that's an underrated play right now. And let me actually say another thing that I think is really underrated is people posting to their close friend story. This is something that I don't think has been hacked at all. When a lifestyle creator posts to their full main Instagram story, especially if there's somebody that posts often, which people are gifting packages to people that are on PR lists, so they're getting a lot of packages. There's a very easy way for a creator to look at it and feel like it is something that they are doing frequently. But if they post it to their close friends list, it's almost like oh wait, they actually really care about this because they're not showing it to everybody. Maybe this is something that I should care about. And I don't think that that's something that is done frequently enough. And I think that that's a little hack that some people could probably get away with.
That answers perfectly. I kind of just wanted you to drop some knowledge. So thank you for
Cool.
that. Yeah, well, it's 11:30. So I think that's a perfect segue into the Q&A. I really wanted I had a question about authenticity. We kind of covered it. We kind of did it. Somebody submitted one. So I thought it was perfect that we can go into it. But this one's for the group. How do you balance posting content that is authentic to your community versus being, on trend? We see TikTok trends and Instagram Reel trends and all that. Like, what's that balance like as a brand? And then JT from the creator perspective too. Sabina, if you want to take this
I
away.
can start. Yeah. It's interesting because the on trend stuff, like even 6 months ago, used to do a lot better for us than it does now. So I don't know if JT, you're seeing this, but like if you just like following the same thing and doing it for yourself, that used to pick up for us, especially on TikTok. And now it kind of doesn't. Like it's kind of just like an average post for us. So we stopped doing it as much. Now sounds are different. Like on trend sounds, if we can make them authentic to us, that does super well still. And it has to be it almost has to be like surprising, there has to be this element of like surprise and delight. And without examples, I don't know if I'm even giving or doing it justice, but that's what we found is like, we try to err a little bit more on kind of like the not on trend stuff, the evergreen stuff that works for us. And then of course, if there's something where like the Barbie thing from a few weeks ago, we were like, we have to do that. It's like our brand, right? And we did it. We were the first ones to do it. It did really well for us. All the other brands followed suit. And by then it was over. Right. And so we tend to not do as many on trend as much, but we do, I for TikTok sounds, that typically does really well for us. And as long as it's authentic, again, like it still has to have that authentic story of why it relates to us.
I agree with all of that. I think all of your content should be authentically aligned with your brand. And I think that the dependency on trends versus, let's say, like something that isn't a trend, that's just like an original piece of content that you come up with out of thin air. I think that also depends on like the vibe of the brand. Like I use Duolingo as an example because everybody knows them, but like they're doing a shit ton of trends and they make it work for them because it's part of the brand that they've kind of created and the vibe that they've kind of created. The way that I look at it, like for me, I don't do any trends because it doesn't feel like it's aligned with like me. I feel a little bit like it feels a little bit uncomfortable when I'm doing it. So I think it's fully dependent on you and your brand. I think that when you're creating the content, you want all of the content to be authentic, because at the end of the day, if you go viral for something that isn't authentic, now you have a shit ton of people that like you for something that you're not. Now you have people that are following you because you're humorous when you're a serious company. Now you have people that are following you because you gave some political rant when like really you actually want to be like a fun and like easygoing, company or brand. So I think all of the content you want it to be authentic. And I think if you start with that and start with like, let's be authentic to us, let's try to provide value to the end consumer that we're trying to get in front of, then I think you can just play wherever. Just test a bunch of things, try a bunch of different things, have fun with it. If you lead with those two, you'll be in the right direction.
Yeah. It's also really stressful to try to like stay on trend, like, cause you're like,
For sure.
Are you done? Like, whereas if evergreen content, you can kind of plan ahead a little bit, but if you're just trying to get it in the moment, it's not for me, it's special for Cameron, my social media person.
Trends,
it's like, like I have
it's
to
a one-way ticket to burnout if trends is your full social strategy, because every single day it's what are we doing today? You can't plan ahead.
Yeah.
You can't pre-shoot anything. You can't make a content calendar. It's like, we got to follow what's up today. So yeah, I think it's a hard thing for anybody to do trends every day. I think it should be a smaller percentage of your strategy, if it is any.
Yeah, Julia, how are you guys viewing kind of the balance between those two? Because I know you mentioned that's one thing where you guys really wanted to invest in, was creating content moving forward. Are you viewing like, how are we going to do the trends versus authentic content, or how are you guys looking at it?
Yeah, so I think very aligned with how Sabina and JT are talking about it. It is a portion of content if and when it aligns with something we would have a point of view of or can show up authentically as a brand. But it's definitely not the be all end all. And I think it's so important that it be something that it doesn't feel out of left field for our community, for us as a brand to be participating in or commenting on.
Makes sense. So there's a bunch of different social media platforms that you can build your brand on, right? You've got LinkedIn, you've got TikTok, you've got Instagram, you've got Twitter, you have all these. I mean, there's going to be a new one tomorrow, I'm sure. Do you have any tactics to figure out where your community is coming from? And then on top of that, how do you maintain a balance across all those platforms and a cohesive message? JT, I feel like this one's
probably. So we're at like a really interesting point right now, because we've gone through a handful of years, like let's say 3 years now, where we've had these like discovery feeds, which is like TikTok. You don't know what you're going to see, but you know it's going to be something that you're going to be interested in. So I feel like we're almost getting to a point right now where there's a little bit of fatigue with that, where people are almost craving like some sort of relationship and some sort of different variety within the content, that they know the people that they're going to see. So for me, even as a creator and as a consumer, a year ago, if you would have asked me, I would have said I'm spending 97% of my time on TikTok. Right now, I feel like it's actually spread throughout a handful of the short form ones, meaning TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, even posting things on LinkedIn. To know where people are coming from, a lot of times you just have to ask. Like, you can do little tracking and like see on the analytics on the back end, where did this traffic come from? But it's just really hard to know where that audience is. So a lot of the times I think it's building a little bit of like a focus group that could be consumers, that could be people that have purchased products, that could be at checkout, that could be like whatever it is, but just actually seeing like where are they coming from and asking them is a great way to do that. And then the efficient thing I think is really not beating yourself up if you can't get to everything. Like it is, again, when there's not a clear like front runner of you have to do this and nothing else, everybody tries to do everything and go deep into everything. And that's another quick road to burnout. Whereas I think my strategy for consumer brands would be like, if you could estimate, where do you think the biggest majority of your customers are? Go play in that field and really execute on that. And like, if you wanted to look at it as like a percentage, like put 75% of your time into that platform where you really think the majority of them are. And then with 25% of the time, like play in these other ones and have fun with it and test it and see until you're sure that your consumers have moved to a different one. Because I know a lot of companies, especially CPG, are not going to build 10 to 20 person content teams that can execute like a Mr. Beast on every channel. And so I think you need to really think about like, how can we do the best with the team that we have? And that is picking one or maybe two, three at the most to dive into and actually execute on fully.
Yeah. And the pressure, I mean, I think you're right, JT, that the pressure to, you see, there's like a little bit of comparison is a thief of joy. You'll see other brands that are bigger or have more resources and you're like, well, they can do all of them. And it's like, that's just not one, that's not serving you because you're spread too thin. But then two, you should just figure out also what you're really good at, right? Like we're not good at Twitter. Like we just aren't. We tried it. We like sometimes get on there, someone will tag us or something. It's just not something that we'll ever probably prioritize. And that's okay. And like, you know, for example, this last quarter, we added demos to like a ton of field marketing and we had never done that. But again, like retail's our focus and we've seen the ROI on those and we've seen, you know, our brand ambassadors, our community, just all of that ignited. And, you know, that pulls budget and that pulls resources and eyeballs from something else. And that's okay because that's what we prioritize. I think lesson for me, and I guess like all the leaders on this call is don't kind of jerk your team around with what the next hot thing is, because that creates a lot of chaos for them. And that, you know, like if I were, when I saw Twitter slipping or like, we don't post that much on LinkedIn or whatever it is, if I was like, no, you know, Patrick and Cameron, you guys have to do all of these things. Or if there's like new, like Be Real, a lot of brands were getting on Be Real. If I was like, you have to get on Be Real, it doesn't allow them to focus. So what we do is we have quarterly KPIs and we kind of reassess, okay, this is our top, you know, if this slips, it's okay. You know, where do we need more resources? So I think putting the pressure to be everywhere all at once is just, it's like not realistic. And then you kind of just get flat content. And what we've done too is like, you know, if we are spread thin or if the team's like, you know, we just don't have capacity because of XYZ, then we'll ruthlessly say like, okay, for us, it's Instagram, like just Instagram's the bare minimum and then TikTok and then whatever else that follows.
Julia, I had a question for you. You know, coming from RX Bar and larger brands, and Sabina, if you can touch on this too, like what was the community building strategy there versus kind of like not upstart, but as you know, in the better for you space, it's been growing so quickly over the last 5 years. Mush obviously being one of the brands that's exploded over the last 5 years. Like, how can you compare the two kind of community building strategies?
Yeah, I think so the community building strategy at our RX Bar was quite similar to Mush. I mean, Peter and Jared, the founders of the brand, it was always a community first brand, originally with the CrossFit community. And so whether it was in one-to-one interactions in gyms or via social, it was very much a core pillar of the brand, from customer service, insights, engaging with the community. And it was always something that was very at the forefront of the strategy. I think from a larger company, and I'm totally dating myself, as I mentioned, social media was very much the afterthought of marketing at that point. And this is embarrassing, but like, I don't think we did any community kind of management. We had an agency that we worked with for social content, and approved it, and it went live, and there was probably someone at the agency that was responding to comments and flagging anything that was of concern, but it was not a focus at that time for kind of the more traditional marketing teams.
And Sabina, any comparisons for you?
Yeah, you're not dating yourself, Julia. I also remember when it was like, so I moved our budget when I was on Lay's. I moved our budget to 60% digital, and I'm talking like print, radio, like TV, that was the other stuff. So I moved it to 60% digital, and that was like revolutionary. Like people were like, that's crazy. Like you guys can't do that. Now it's like probably 90% digital, aside from like a Super Bowl ad. But I think that, I mean, the biggest thing for us, like on the Lay's brand, we didn't really, I think the biggest thing that happened when I was at Frito-Lay that was so scary for the brand teams was specifically for Cheetos. So we all had different brand teams. It was like Doritos, Lay's, Cheetos, Ruffles, etc. And the Cheetos brand was just like sweating bullets when Tapatio, or not with Tapatio, when what are those like circular ones called? Takis. When Takis was growing, and Cheetos literally was losing share by the week. Like they could not keep up with this. It, at the time, was a startup brand. Now Takis is huge, and Cheetos has actually replicated a lot of Takis products, which is kind of interesting. But Takis had this community and built it truly from like on the ground. Like when I say field marketing, like in gas stations, in like neighborhoods, like it was kind of crazy to see. And then they're taking on Cheetos, right? And you're seeing it. The only reason Cheetos noticed is because it was literally in the numbers, right? Like every single week, it was like chipping at the share. And that was, I mean, I just think like Takis did it extraordinarily well. And that was kind of a number of years ago. Now they're a big company, but being able to, you know, do it with a product and a consumer that is so almost like beloved. Like it was just really cool to see. At the time we were like, oh shit, but like now I'm like, that was really cool to see, right? But we didn't do anything really. We were almost too big, it felt, right? Like Lay's was a $3 billion brand just in the US. So it just we had these kind of like faux PR moments. I'm sure you did that, Julia, where we would like invite people to an event, and like really it was just for PR, and it was so Good Morning America would cover it. But were there really that many engaged consumers there? I don't know. I don't think so. I think they used, you know, Lay's as a backyard barbecue chip. Like they weren't like, oh my God, I love this brand. They were just like, yeah, it serves the purpose that I need it to serve.
Green onion Lays are elite, I will say that. But anyways, okay, so we have 1 minute left. You guys crushed it. Thank you. Sabina, where can people find you and Dough if they wanted to stay in touch and follow along?
Yeah, we're at Eat Dough, DEUX everywhere. And then I'm just at Sabina Latta.
Julia, for you, and then also for Mush.
Yeah, so Mush, all the socials at Mush, and then I am Julia at eatmush.com.
JT.
Everything is at JT Barnett.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We've got the next session starting at 1. We had a few questions about this that we didn't get to, but it's about turning community into sales. And a lot of that's going to be focused on retail. Sabina, I know you touched on it too. But thanks for coming, guys. That's it. We'll see everybody back at 1 o'clock. And again, you guys killed it. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, bro.
Thanks so much for having us.